I'm Michael Guy, and I'm the creative director here. What that really means is I'm the graphic designer. I've worked here for 46 years. I haven't done graphic design the whole time, but I painted scenery, was receptionist.
My name is Stephen Thorne. I am a resident acting company member, and I've been a resident acting company member for 21 years.
I'm Kurt Columbus. I'm the artistic director here at Trinity Repertory Company. I'm approaching 16 years in a couple of months. I think Trinity started doing A Christmas Carol because Adrian Hall, who was our founding director, said, I think we should do something at the holiday time. And I don't think that he had any particular affinity for any particular story, but he loved the old movie, A Christmas Carol. And so a lot of the stuff from our original production was borrowed from that original movie.
I don't know that there was an intention to do it every year, but I think they discovered really quickly that they could.
So my first exposure to Trinity's Christmas Carol was being in it. It was during my first season here. And back then, way back then, we actually had two full casts of the show. The second cast would get a truncated rehearsal period, just basically kind of copy what the first, more or less, copy what the first cast did. And so you just kind of plug in. I was in the second cast, so it was slightly disorienting to kind of like having heard all about this incredible show and then just to be dropped in the middle of it. It was really weird because people know the show so well. So they'd be like, okay, and now, you know, Carol of the Bells, and suddenly be like, da 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 da. And so it really was like, by the end of the run, I knew what I was doing.
When I came to Trinity Rep, I saw Amanda Daynard's really brilliant production when I was first named artistic director, and I went, oh, this is not my experience of Christmas Carol at all. In my first season, I decided that it would be a really good idea to direct Christmas Carol. Now, I'm glad I did it. I think that it was a mistake because Trinity Rep's Christmas Carol is so unique that really I should have watched it for 5 or 10 years before I decided to direct it. I had a young person who's now in their late 20s say to me, oh, I remember coming to Christmas Carol at Trinity, and the year that I saw it, there was this giant ghost of Christmas Future, who's this huge head and giant hands, and I said, oh my gosh, that was my production. And he said, I was scared out of my mind by that thing. So that made me happy. And then I've directed it again since. I've worked on an adaptation so that we could collect sort of all of the ideas over the years into a more formal Trinity Rep version. So now I've had a lot of experience with it.
Christmas carols that I remember, I'm having a hard time just because there have been so many of them. I remember the one from 2 years ago because Tavon Gamble, who's just joined the company as a resident artist, he was really fantastic as Jacob Marley. The director wanted him to have an understory that was never spoken, but you felt like he had great affection for Scrooge. Like maybe more than just great affection for Scrooge, and that something was going on there. But he did it in such a beautiful, subtle way. It was amazing, and plus his Marley was so scary.
I should think about what roles have I not done. I've done most of them. In fact, I think I've done everything this year, although I've not done A Christmas Present, which I am doing this year. But doing the show multiple times, I mean, I've watched and learned and stolen from all of my colleagues who have taken, you know, what seem to be these kind of throwaway characters and created something out of like 2 lines. I mean, it's astonishing. You know, Bill Domkeller and Brian McElhaney and Phyllis Kay and Annie Scaria and the rest of our amazing company have all taught me that.
There are a couple that I remember that were like really very different and special. One was directed by Brian McElhaney, who's a resident company member. He had this inspiration that if Scrooge had been born near the end of the Victorian period, when he was an adult, it could have been the 1940s. So when he goes to Christmas Past, that's Victorian. But then as he experiences other ones as he grows older, you've got the teens, the 20s, and they went as far as having a kind of 1950s rock and roll ambiance for Christmas Carol. There was another one where a director named Neil Barron, who was at the time the associate artistic director to Richard Jenkins, he decided to make it a very Providence Christmas Carol. The Big Blue Bug, that was on the set in one point. The dancing policeman who directs traffic around Christmas time down by City Hall, he was in every performance. He came in, and as there was like a crossover as everybody's singing different songs, he would direct them and dance and spin and turn. Oh, there was references to probably Allie's Donuts and Dell's Lemonade and things like that. So that was fun.
Every year, the costumes are amazing. When Phyllis Kay played the Ghost of Christmas Present several years ago, I had her come out of a Christmas present. Like when she first appeared on stage, they opened the box and her head was in the box. And then she rose up out of the floor and was in this long flowing red thing that then they took off of her and they billowed up over the audience. And her costume had lights sewn into it and it was just a Valentine to Christmas.
That first year, I remember, it was Kevin Moriarty was the director, and it was a very dingy look for much of the show, I remember. So everybody was in grays and browns and everything. But I remember late in the rehearsal process when they were doing the finale, the reclamation, when it's supposed to be all happy and Christmassy, everybody was coming out in their gray, dingy stuff, and it was like, I think Kevin at one point was realized we actually need to kind of spice this up a little bit. So they added all this color in, but there was a period where it was they came out, yeah, we're so happy, and everybody just looked miserable and terrible.
Were there any special effects that stood out?
Angela Brazil and Stephen Thorne directed this. Orlando Hernandez was the Ghost of Christmas Present. He announced his entrance by tap dancing, because Orlando's a tap dancer, behind this door, and then he zip-lined into the scene. It was awesome.
The snow is always magical. It just is. It just is. Even for me. And I've seen it lots of times. And there was actually one year when Amanda Daynard directed it, but there was snow all over the stage, about, I want to say, 9 to 12 inches of snow. You'd go home and you'd change your clothes or you'd shower and you'd go, where did the snow come from? I would find snow 5 months later.
Supposedly, administration worked out a formula, I don't know if this is true, that the more it snows on stage, the more money we make. That people really love the snow on stage.
My wife Angela Brazil and I co-directed the show 4 or 5 years ago with Joe Wilson Jr. as Scrooge. Our thing that we were really, really proud of, we centered the show on community. And so we reached out to 20 or 21 different community groups, people that are doing work in communities in Rhode Island, serving different populations. And we wanted to feature that work, feature them on stage. And so we rehearsed with all of them, we incorporated them into the show, they had lines, they had a little musical number at the end. It went like gangbusters, but really because of the support of the costume shop. In fact, this very room that we're chatting in was where their dressing room, where they would come in, they got to choose their costumes, and they had people helping them backstage, here's where you enter, here's where you exit. It was an incredible celebration of community, but more specifically just Rhode Island community. We were just really, really, really proud of that part of it.
It's interesting. The thing that I think is special, every year we have all of these kids in the cast. And my first season, I had these 2 just amazing Tiny Tims. They were both great kids. The one came back a couple of years ago with his girlfriend. He's now 21. And I just started crying because I was like, I remember you when you were 7, and it just really kind of brought everything home that the thing that's special about this is in fact the relationship that you have with these folks off stage, right? And that they bring so much of themselves to this story. Other places you just show up and you're a hired hand. But I think here at Trinity Rep, the thing that's special is that people actually invest themselves in this story so actively that what I think about when I think of off stage are those relationships that last, that go on, that keep going.
Tickets for A Christmas Carol are on sale now.
Right now. Right literally this very minute.
And so don't miss out.
You can go to your computer, you can get your little fingers working, you can go to
TrinityRep.com/Carol.
and get your tickets.